Buenos dias, everybody. My name is Benno Koehorst. I'm working for the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and the Environment. And in fact, I'm working at the execution agency of it. And they are responsible for the networks, the road networks, the waterways networks, and the ecosystems we have in the Netherlands. We are the largest procurer in the Netherlands with a volume of about 3 to 4 billion euro each year. So that gives you an idea of what kind of organization it is. I will give you a short lecture about what we are doing about building information management and how it is organized in the Netherlands and within our organization. So first a few words about the ambition, then the aim, the roadmap we have within our organization. How do we procure BIM as such? Because we put it in our contracts and in quite a special manner, I would say. A short example and a little bit about training and practice. Well, this is our ambition. We want to increase the level of quality of information during the whole life cycle. And we are convinced that when we reach that, we have more efficiency and we are able to lower the costs. We get higher quality of the works that are being executed, less debates with the contractor, better delivery to the asset management part of our organization, and altogether it provides more transparency and accountability. It stimulates innovation within the sector itself, because it's not only a technical matter, but it's really more a process innovation. The introduction of building information management. And last, very important for us, because we are a public organization, it's to create a level playing field for all of us. And that means that we are very fond of the introduction of open standards, rather than working with proprietary standards. We can't prescribe those standards or certain products who use that in our contracts, because then we do not create a level playing field for everybody. So this is very important for a public organization as we are. Well, this is a very familiar picture for you, I guess. Within each phase or between each stakeholder in every transaction, you may lose some information. And well, that's a pity. And that's also a source for extra costs and extra irritation, I would say, also within the project. So we aim for the blue line, to have a continuous line in the development of the knowledge based on the information and all the activities which are carried out in the project over the life cycle. We hope to achieve that with the introduction of BIM. For us, it's not building information modeling, but more information management. This is a sheet which explains the typical situation we are in as a infrastructure manager. There are various types of data which comes from various sources, and each of that type of data has their own typical structure. For instance, GIS data is very relevant, of course, for infrastructure. CAD or BIM data, data regarding systems engineering, the typical information we get from the asset management system, so that's the current object information, external documents, the state of the network as it is. That's also typical information which comes from inspection processes, and of course the information about the versions and the provenance of all that information. It's a whole lot. The characteristic of that information is that it has a wide variety of structures and formats and software tooling and all that. and also the processes behind the retrieval of that kind of information are quite different. So it's really a challenge to bring it all together into an infra project, whether it is restructuring of the network or maintenance activities. Well, how to achieve this? We think that building information management with the use of open standards is a very promising development. And what we have seen is the development goes quite fast over the last decade, and the power of the computers increases. We think you can do it. The information exchange between the processes and the stakeholders and the various phases of the project, you can't do it in an analog way anymore. So you need to make it much more efficient and way better than just sending information via email or whatsoever. So for us, BIM or Open BIM consists of information in a structured data set. We use mainly object type libraries for that. I come back to that later on. You need to make use for standards for the exchange of all the information. We made a standard in the Netherlands which is capable of combining all those information from the various sources into a container which is sent over from one party to another. Currently it's under, we brought it in as a new work item in ISO. And the third element is that the software is capable of using all those standards, and because our market parties, they are working very much with all those tooling available on the market. Not so much ourselves, but the way we procure the contracts on the market is that most of the time they are design build or design build and maintenance, or design build finance and maintenance, and the latter ones are the biggest ones. Those are the multi-billion euro tenders. And within those tenders, we don't do the work anymore. We don't design anymore. We just procure and deliver the data. So the Rijkswaterstaat organization, which is the execution agency of the ministry and the asset owner of the Dutch networks, they became in the last 2 decades more a procurer type of organization and a data manager, rather than a design type of organization or civil engineering type of organization, which we used to be in the past. So it's Rijkswaterstaat is a very old organization, it's 200 years old. So that's really a big change for us, and it goes very rapidly. So to summarize the challenge we have with the introduction of BIM is that our asset management system contains of a lot of systems, and it's therefore very unstructured. This is not typical for Rijkswaterstaat. I also have a lot of contact with other European road authorities, and they face the same problem. And it becomes even worse when they are responsible as well for rail, because rail infrastructure has an extra set of all kinds of asset management systems. And it's really a big challenge for those national road authorities to modernize their asset management system. So that's a big challenge. The data exchange from the asset management system to the project responsible for the execution of the project, and to the contractor, that's really a challenge too, because then you need to be able to understand the digital exchange, the digital structure, and you need to be able to work with it. So that is quite a big requirement also for the tooling. data in different IT systems. It's not only at our side, at the client side, but also at the contractor side. During exploitation, various IT systems are used, and also relevant data is in there. So again, a challenge to bring it all together. There's a potential risk of vendor locked in with IT systems based on proprietary standards. We have some very bad experience with that, especially for traffic control centers, and we don't want to happen that again. So that's why we stimulate the use of open standards, and we also put a lot of investments in the development of open standards. So looking at the current setting, there are some open standards, especially the IFC standard is very famous, but it's very well applicable for buildings and not so much yet for infrastructure, but it's coming. So together with the Building Smart organization, we have developed in the last 2 years, an IFC alignment standard, and that's a big step forward. So we finance that together with the Swedish road authority and the Finnish ones, and once you do that, it's demand driven, and within a year they fixed the job, which I find was quite an achievement. The software tooling is not in place yet, so I come back to that later on. We also have an activity to stimulate the development of software tooling, making use of open standards. And design models, like for instance the IFC models, are not really useful for asset managers. And it's not only a conclusion from our side, but it's also valid in, for instance, in the building sector, where facility managers say, well, it's nice to have those design models and the IFC models, but to do a proper asset management or facility management, then it doesn't contain the data I need for that. So that's an issue too. Well, that's the challenge we had at Rijkswaterstaat, but also in the Netherlands as a whole. What have we done since then? We started with the Rijkswaterstaat BIM program in 2012. Our board of directors said, well, the technique is there, the interest is there, the market might be ready for it. Now it's time for us to act. So it's out of the research environment. It's already there, and we need to apply it in practice. It will not be an easy job. So that's why the board of directors said, well, we need a separate Rijkswaterstaat BIM program for it. Not a project, but really a program with a very senior level director on it. And we start with it for the first session is for 2 years, and then we evaluate the results, and if they are beneficial, then we can extend the work, and that has been carried out. So after the first evaluation in 2014, the results were very promising. We started with maybe 4 large projects to put it in the tender documents that we want to make use of BIM technology. We just say it in that way. We only specified our needs for information and the structure and the exchange mechanism. That's all. I come back to that later on. Within the set of 20-25 large projects, right now there are road widening projects among the biggest we have in the Netherlands. So those are the multi-billion euro projects, and smaller ones too. And now we make the step to ordinary maintenance projects. Those are the projects on the road side. We also have a very large sluice renovation program, which are the big locks for ships. And among those locks, they are one of the biggest in Europe. And there we also put in the tender documents the request for information management and our requirements. So for us it is, we would like to achieve to get the asset management information in control. That means up-to-date, reliable and correct information. Having the information under control, that's one thing, but having the flow of information under control, that's another thing. So that's also very important. So again, that means the right information in the right form at the right time, at the right people, with the right responsibilities. So this is another picture where you see the green box. That's typical the scope of the Rijkswaterstaat BIM program. We scoped it, we concentrate on the project management and try to support the project management with information management via building information management. And that's what we did. Underneath you see the asset management layer within the organization. It's very general, very common. You can compare it also with other types of national road authorities in Europe. Most of them has this kind of structure. And for everybody it's a big challenge to deliberate the information from the asset manager to the project management level, and later on, after the project has finished, back again into the asset management system. And the same challenge is there from the Rijkswaterstaat organization or the National Road Authority as a whole to the contractors. So this is another schema. The envelope is a standard which handles about the process of delivery of the information. So we use that, we require that in our contracts to make use of that. Then in the green box you see the BIM container with all the data in it. That can be of various formats and structures. That goes together with the process structure. And there's an information delivery manual which says about what kind of information we would like to have. So these are the typical requirements we set in our contracts. So we put a lot of effort in the development of an object type library. We didn't have one. And we only had an asset management system which consists of many systems, maybe 10 or 50 kinds of systems with all their own, they all have their own structure and pieces of data. So it's really fragmented. So within one of the first actions within the BIM program was to develop an object type library. And it's based on linked data technology, so the most advanced technology there available on the market. It's a very promising technology because it's very easy to link to other object type libraries. I have a picture later on about that. The development of an object type library is really a big job. So it's very specialistic type of work, where it could cost us about, well, in the first year we had a version, in the second year we had a more or less stable version, but still it's under development. And we are very pleased with that, because we use it in the contracts, and once the contractor received the object type library, he's required to deliver his data according to that specific structure. So we don't use the word BIM or whatsoever in our contracts. We only say, well, here we have a data structure, we call it our object type library, It consists of objects and they are related to each other, and those objects have certain kind of properties. We are clear about that, and you have to deliver according to that structure. Well, that was a big challenge for contractors to do that, because they use their own software tooling, and they use a different kind of terminology. It varies. It may vary from software package to software package. And well, we say, okay, that's your problem, your challenge, as long as you deliver in our structure according to our definitions. And it's a big challenge, but the contractors are glad that it's going that way, because now it's clear what to do. And also for software development, it creates some clarity, and that's what they needed to get the acceptance and the approval for proper investments in their development. So in the development at the contractor side or at development of the software vendors. Another thing we developed were the data exchange standards. So the process standard was more or less all ready when we started, and the exchange standard for the data was also quite ready, but we have improved it, because now we get a better, because we put it into practice, we get a better understanding how it worked in practice. And we said, well, or the people at both contractor sides said, well, theoretically maybe it might be nice, but for practical reasons we need to adjust it, and that's carried out during the 2 years as well. So there's a rather stable version now. Well, this is about the information delivery in the contract. So we are very clear about what data we would like to get, when to deliver, what the process of delivery will be, and what the format of delivery will be. That tells you a little bit more about the object type libraries. So an object type library is a taxonomy of objects, in our case of objects of infrastructure, and their relationships. And the properties attached to those specific objects. Well, we made our own object type library, which is also partly connected to parts of the asset management system, the most relevant ones. And that's what we have done on the level of an organization. At the same time, on national level, we also developed an object type library, but that's a more generic one. The specialists say, well, it's very handy to have object type libraries on organizational level, on national level, and also on international level, because then that might stimulate the development of it, and also the customization of the software tooling to that. And that can be done because when you apply linked data technology, that's specifically made for that. Furthermore, there's a need for object type library standards. Well, as I said before, it provides a structure for the information delivery and the exchange of it over the process, and also with the stakeholders in the value chain. And we believe that's the way to go for the interoperability. So this is a picture of the object type libraries. The circles, those are the objects, and the lines are the relationships between those objects. And basically saying, well, a road consists of an asphalt layer, and there's maybe some or pavement, and a pavement consists of lines, and maybe there's an embankment underneath it and all that. And you can debate for many hours on it, how to do it. And that's really the challenge for the modelers to do that. Once other types of organizations also have a certain kind of structure according to an object type library, then with the linked data principle, it's very easy to link to other terms in other object type libraries and make use of that specific data there. So for instance, at Rijkswaterstaat, we also have our legacy of the obligation to deliver to legacy systems outside the Rijkswaterstaat organization. For instance, where geographical information is stored. If those people also have a kind of object type library, it's very easy to link to their specific objects, and then it's quite easy that they can benefit from the data delivered in our infra projects, and also vice versa. It's a lot of work to do that, but basically the techniques are there to do that. And I come back to and that's really the element of data sharing, rather than exchanging data in a physical way and put it in one big database. So that's what the specialists, they are quite convinced about it. One big database will not work, and that's also the reason why techniques such as semantic web technology has been developed. So this is really a basic, for the technicians, it's really a basic step forward in their thinking. Well, this is tells you a little bit more about the container-based data drop. It's currently, we just had our kick-off meeting in ISO, and yeah, basically it's a zip file which contains many kinds of structures. So very specific for the new thing here is that it can contain object type libraries of any kind, and it can also contain the usual stuff like PDFs or Excels or doc files or whatsoever. And within these specific standards, there is a mechanism which is called deep linking. So if you apply that within your project, then you're able to use data which is presented in a doc file, for instance, and you can attach it, link it to your object type library. And that's really a valuable mechanism to have, which is a first step. It's quite a modest step, I would say, but a very essential step to make use of non-structured data and link it together and combine it with structured data. So that's really a big step forward. So that's all about the container itself. It's possible to have your own reference model. So if you have, for instance, typical Spanish models, or in an organization, then people are free to make those models and also attach it to the standard. 2 minutes, yeah, okay. And furthermore, it combines GIS data with building information data, very relevant for infrastructure. I skipped the example because I have 2 minutes and rush to the conclusions. But before that, I tell a little bit about how it is organized in the Netherlands, the BIM implementation. We have a special national program for it, which is called the BIM Information Council, with all kinds of high-level figures from various parts of the sector in it. And we have recently, last year, we have established the BIM kiosk, and the main goal of the BIM kiosk is to improve the adoption of open BIM standards and to create a market for it within the Netherlands, but also in an international field. Furthermore, we are very active in an international field. There are a number of standardization activities where we have action. We have a European funded project together with other European road authorities. We work on the development of a European road object type library, so that's the one on international level. And well, as you can see, Spain is not included, but if you have an interest, you're always welcome. Please send me an email, and because we are very much open to other countries to collaborate as well, and also bring in their test cases. And the final one, well, the ISO. Well, future needs. I think it's very important to create a market for open standards, and you can only do that via contracts. That's my belief. And from our experience, we see that it worked very well. A further market uptake by the IT industry of open standards is very useful. Development of object type libraries and standards for it. Stimulate the use of semantic web technology. The IT parties I have contact with are and which are specialized in BIM are not so much into linked data yet. They know about it and they think it's very promising, but it's very difficult for them to start investing in it because they don't see a market for it. So that's really a chicken and egg situation. And the establishment of networks of public clients is very relevant. Well, some conclusions. I skipped that. There's no time for questions. Enjoy the picture of Rotterdam. This is Rotterdam. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, you can raise them or afterwards or send me an email. Thank you very much.